Welcome to the Teaching Journeys podcast, hosted by Dave Roberts. Humanity possesses a unique skill, the ability to pass knowledge from one generation to the next. This podcast embraces that ability, offering learning opportunities through conversations with extraordinary guests. Dave aims to leave a positive mark on individuals around the world. So before you dive into today's episode, please share this podcast with your network, including friends, family, and colleagues. And please consider leaving a rating or review. Your support makes all the difference.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Teaching Journeys podcast. I'm your host, Dave Roberts, and it is my absolute pleasure to have as a return guest Vanessa Cardenas. Vanessa is a relationship reset expert and betrayal recovery specialist who has helped individuals and couples rebuild, trust, restore emotional connection, and regain clarity from the inside out since 2017. She is the founder of Understanding Ear and the creator of the Hope Roadmap, a structured approach designed to help people stabilize after betrayal, navigate emotional disconnection, and make grounded decisions about what comes next in their relationships. Vanessa's work focuses on emotional safety, intentional communication, and restoring self-trust when relationships feel uncertain or fractured. For years, Vanessa was considered a best-kept secret, quietly supporting clients through some of the most painful and defining moments of their lives. In 2025, her work was finally formally recognized when she was named Best Relationship Coach in Westchester County. What sets Vanessa apart is that her work is both professionally informed and lived. She understands betrayal not only through years of guiding others, but through her own marriage, which she chose to rebuild after betrayal when she and her husband committed to doing the necessary work. That experience allows her to speak with honesty, restraint, and credibility about what healing actually requires over time. Clients often describe her impact simply and powerfully. One shared, "Working with Vanessa helped me come back to myself. I stopped spiraling and finally trusted my own decisions again." Vanessa works with individuals and couples who are outwardly capable, yet quietly struggling, often stuck between staying, leaving, or resetting a relationship that no longer feels safe or connected. Her approach blends trauma-aware insight, communication mastery, and practical guidance without clinical language or performance. She believes empowerment begins when people feel safe enough to trust themselves again and strong enough to choose what comes next. Vanessa, welcome back to the Teaching Journeys podcast. I've been looking forward to part 2 for a long time now.
Likewise, Dave. Thank you so much for having me back. Oh, we're going to have such another good conversation. So thank you for the opportunity.
You're welcome. And you were in episode 221 on my podcast. We recorded back in January of 2026, and we covered your backstory. We covered the issues that you and your husband had to deal with after his betrayal in the marriage. We talked about how that set the groundwork for the work that you do now. We talked about your Oxford TEDx talk and the nasty chick voice that uh, keeps sabotaging us in a lot of different ways and keeps us from, our true growth and finding our true purpose. And we also talked about what betrayal recovery looked like, and we really took a deep dive into that. And so when we were planning for this podcast, I wanted to really talk to you about the work you do with couples counseling after infidelity, because one of the things I discovered, and you validated this for me, is there hasn't been a lot of discussion on this particular aspect of couples relationships. And it's something that needs to be discussed because infidelity is something that occurs in a lot of marriages, and you deal with that specifically. And one of the things you mentioned to me, and this is going to be like a lead-in question, but the couples counseling after infidelity, this is not marriage counseling we're talking about. Am I correct?
I'm an alternative to marriage counseling and marriage therapy, which for a lot of my clients, they have tried and it has not been successful for a variety of reasons. Usually because betrayal is a different type of trauma. There are lots of nuances to it. And if the therapist is not quite skilled in it, they might actually do a little bit more damage to the situation than helping to resolve the situation, especially when they dig through the past and want to find out the patterns from the past that might have led to the infidelity. Whereas I start right where we are. What is going on today? How is everybody feeling today? Not back there, because we're not living back there. We're living here and now. When we spoke last time in episode 221, we talked about my backstory. And very simply, my husband said 3 words to me: I've met someone. This was after two decades of marriage. I was completely blindsided by this. Now, I'm a smart woman. I have a psychology degree. I thought for sure I could fix me and I could fix him. And again, you'll hear what I just said: fix me, as if there was a problem with me
Yeah.
that caused the infidelity, and then fix him so that it wouldn't happen again. And he and I went to marriage counseling. We went to marriage therapy because they are a little different from each other, as well as coaching, as well as group coaching, well as having individual therapy sessions. And now that I know what I know, because I didn't know back then, it was, I found that marriage counseling, we were just constantly regurgitating the same stories, the same situation over and over and over again with no resolution. Like, what is the solution? How can we move forward through this? And we weren't even necessarily guided through it. It was more like, go around it. Let's put it all together into one bucket and then move the bucket off to the side. And then if something else came up, it would get put into the bucket rather than facing each individual situation in and of itself in the present moment. And we were there for 2.5 years. Every single week, we went to marriage counseling for a 50-minute session, which was mostly me screaming. I'm going to be honest with you. Yeah, I was mostly crying, tears, screaming, wanting to understand why this happened. And I come from a background where I do believe that certain situations are put in front of you to show you a different path, show you something else, for you to see it so that you can critically think, okay, I have the situation in front of me. Let me see it for what it is, not what it was, not what it might be, but for actually what it is in that moment. And knowing what I know now compared to what I knew then, I felt at the time that our particular therapist, and we went through several of them, by the way, always put the onus and the responsibility on me. And when you go through betrayal and you have been betrayed, though it happened to you, it wasn't about you. And that was a really hard concept for me to wrap my head around, because the therapists that we had always seemed to imply, not straight out say, but imply that the reason that we were not moving through this and we were circling the drain was that we weren't working hard enough. And no, no. We were very committed to attempting to fix our relationship after the betrayal. And what it actually shifted for us was when someone, a great mentor, a great mentor, said to me, Vanessa, Vanessa, you're going to have a new relationship. You get to decide who that's with. And for me, that was very powerful because it was true. It was very true. I get to decide. I get to choose. That empowered me. Also, that I would have a new relationship. Why would it be a new relationship? I was a new woman and my husband was a new man. He was different. I was different because of these circumstances. And yes, we do have a new relationship. The relationship we had previously, gone because we're both different now. But now we get an opportunity. I refer to it like we were replanted.
Yep.
We were uprooted. Bad storm came and whipped us all around and everything else. And then we laid there for seasons. We still had strong roots, but they were uprooted. And now we needed to be replanted somewhere else so that we could finally bloom again. We could have new leaves. We could have new growth. And we needed that. We absolutely needed that. We couldn't be in the exact same spot that we were before because we knew that the wind knocked us down and caused so much destruction. We needed to rebuild from the ground up. And that's what we did. And we're almost a decade removed from the betrayal. And I'm a little different. I definitely am. I will say that than the regular relationship coaching that happens. And I am an alternative to marriage counseling and marriage therapy. I like to compliment if someone's already doing marriage therapy or marriage counseling and they're finding that they just feel stuck. They need a little bit of movement because you do need to move through the avalanche of emotions that you have after betrayal. And betrayal isn't just physical. There are different types of betrayal. And the spectrum of betrayal is very different for every single couple. What might be acceptable to one couple is absolutely not acceptable to another. And that could be as simple as flirting. One couple might, no, I really don't talk to another woman. I don't want it to be misconstrued in any way. And for others, flirting is just part of their charisma and they understand it. They understand where the line is, that they're not going to cross the line. And the couple is comfortable and content with that because they have clarity. They've communicated to each other where that line is. So that's one form of betrayal. The other betrayal is the emotional betrayal. When you speak to someone outside of your relationship about your relationship, yeah, that's a little dicey, especially if it's someone that you are attracted to. Then there's another type of betrayal, and that has to do financial, where you're keeping a separate secret account from your partner, and that becomes financial betrayal. And then the last one is digital betrayal. Digital is when you are carrying on with an AI and telling it all kinds of secrets. If you are talking digitally to anything or anyone else that you would not share with your spouse, you're keeping secrets. And again, if your relationship is built on we are going to be trustworthy with each other, we are not going to have any secrets, then you're betraying your partner when you do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And, before we talked, I didn't realize that there was that many levels of betrayal because in this, you really think of physical betrayal where somebody is actually having an affair. But you're right, there's so many different layers. And since couples are different, what they're going to perceive as betrayal for one couple might be different than another couple just because we are different. But when you're talking about betrayal, the thing that struck me, Vanessa, is we're talking about crisis. We're talking about, we get into a relationship, we get married, we take those vows that we're going to be faithful to each other, and all of a sudden we find out that we're not. To me, that would be equivalent to finding out that somebody died that I was close to. And I think for me, it would generate the same emotions. And you're right, you can't work on the past because you got to do crisis intervention first. You got to stabilize the crisis, see where people are in the present. What do they want to work on? What are they motivated to work on? And then you go from there. And you're right, they're going to be replanted differently. You know the situation with my daughter. I am not the same person at 47 years old, when she died or transitioned or passed on, and I look at it as transition, but however individuals, view death, I am not the same person at 70 years old than I was at 40 years old, 47 years old. I don't even know what that person was like at 47 years old, but I know I've been replanted differently because of what's happened. And if somebody wanted to give me, well, let's talk about your past, how you got to this point, that would have done me no good because I'm dealing with the present. How am I going to get through this crisis? How can you help me? Give me the resources to mobilize this crisis so I can determine what I need to do going forward. And it sounds like to me, there's initially a lot of crisis intervention and stabilizing the crisis of infidelity before you can do any of the work.
Correct. There is one nuance. The betrayer is still there.
Yeah.
Whereas with your daughter, you can't yell at her. You can't shake her. You can't embrace her. Whereas your betrayer becomes a stranger to you. You don't even know who they are. You don't even know who you are because the avalanche just hits you all at once. And you take on a lot of shame, take on a lot of guilt, take on your partner's guilt and shame as well, because you wonder why. We question God's source spirit almost immediately. Why? Why is this happening? But we, as the betrayed, get to look at our betrayer, and they are there, and they have to account for what they've done. And when I say that, it is a level of responsibility. If we talk about recovery from betrayal, it is taking 100% ownership of the actions that you have done to betray your partner. And I have a lot of couples that come in to my office, and initially the betrayer wants to give all types of excuses as to why this happened. And I have to let them know, you can say anything you want to say, but I am not going to validate that. Because in my mind, there is absolutely no justification for betraying your partner.
What are the reasons that individuals automatically want to justify why they did what they did? Is it denial? Is it just rationalization? Is it that they're just so ashamed of their actions that they're not afraid to own those up, but they're hesitant to own those up, particularly, in the beginning of a therapeutic relationship. So if you could touch on that a little bit, I'd just be curious in terms of what you see the root causes of that are.
Yes. Well, the number one reason that I am given is because of lack of intimacy between the two partners. And this is a really big one. And it's one that the betrayer, because again, the betrayer can be male or female, the husband or the wife, male or female. And there will be a justification for going outside of the relationship because the relationship's intimacy has evolved and changed. Sometimes that has to do with having children, where the wife is so touched out by the end of the day because she has a toddler and a baby and a school-age child. Everybody's pulling at her all the time. And finally, when all is quiet and all is calm, she just wants to sleep. Like, sleep is such a precious thing, especially to a new mother. And men will feel neglected. So I hear that word a lot, neglected. The other word that I hear a lot that kind of rubs me the wrong way is entitled. And I have to, again, correct the spouses. And it's like, you are not entitled to the body of your partner. You're just not. If intimacy is that into me, you see me. I'm exhausted. I'm tired. There's things going on. I don't feel emotionally safe. The distance between us, the other thing that comes up is I'm not appreciated for what I do. So appreciation becomes a benchmark and a measurement towards that as well. Well, I did this, so because I did this, I should get this. So intimacy is the first indicator related to a justification for betrayal, which I don't subscribe to. Absolutely not. And that's in some of the cases related to betrayal. It wasn't in mine. There was absolutely no change in our relationship from my perspective. I didn't see that, and nor did my husband blame that for it. Other couples that come in, the justification that I hear about it is attention. Someone else gave me attention. I liked the way that felt, and it crossed the line. It felt like dating again. I felt alive again. The groundhog day that it happens in relationships, because relationships ebb and flow. They do. And sometimes they get into a rut or a routine. Depends on the word that you use. Routine can be somewhat positive. When I hear a client say, well, we were in a rut is a negative word. So again, if we can reframe it, well, were you in a rut or a routine? And they will ask, well, what's the difference? Well, think of it. One's positive, one's negative. So if we can look at it, we were in a routine that then subsequently just felt like Groundhog Day, day after day after day. And suddenly there's this other person that's paying attention to me, that sees me, that values my opinion, that makes me feel warm and fuzzy. Well, sometimes, and I encourage my clients that I get to before betrayal happens. They realize that something feels off in their relationship and they want to work on it right away. Like we're not communicating. We have a lot of silence in our relationship, whereas before we had so much banter. And now we micromanage our marriage and our family that we really don't talk about us. We never really talk about the future. We don't make the plans that we did when we were dating. And a lot of couples want to go back to that feeling that they had when they were dating. And a lot of them come to the realization that marriage is actually hard work. It's not easy. Just because you find your person and you say, I do, the work doesn't stop. If anything, it accelerates.
And I've said this to my students, Vanessa, marrying the love of your life doesn't mean that it's going to be a bed of roses. It's not going to make you great parents either, because there are different set of skills to be good parents. And I tell my students, I think every one of you should take a parenting course before you get married or shortly after you get married, because it's different. And the best of marriages are going to have their ups and downs, but the best of marriages are built on intimacy is a part of it, but it's also understanding. It's also communication. It's also partnership in terms of the practical things, helping out with the household chores, being supportive. If your spouse doesn't want to be touched, then don't touch them. See what else you can do to meet their needs. Or they may just want to be held. They don't want to have physical intimacy. They just might want to be cuddled. They just might feel safe if the person that they love is holding them. There's a lot of different levels of intimacy, both physical and emotional. But I think when you mentioned, the lack of intimacy, I know if I were in a situation and I betrayed my wife, I would go, there's no physical intimacy. And so I would look outside of the relationship to get that attention, to get that physical intimacy. But then eventually that's going to turn sour anyway. I've talked to individuals who have strayed outside the marriage that have betrayed their partner. And they've said that when they've had that other man or that other woman or other woman wants more than you're capable of giving. And then what happens is that a fling now becomes like a second marriage. And people don't get into flings so they can have a second marriage. They get into flings to either escape or recapture what they had in their first marriage because they're not getting it. So when that becomes now that other person is demanding on their time, I want you to, leave your wife. I want you to spend more time with me. It then becomes more complicated. I'm sure you've probably have dealt with that as well too, in terms of that type of revelation from either the man or woman who's been the betrayer.
Absolutely. And then there are situations where the betrayer doesn't quite know which partner to choose, their wife or their affair partner. Like they're caught in the middle. Meanwhile, they're stringing two, usually women along, bouncing between the two. And that creates a whole other realm of complications. And then when there's children involved, the amount of couples that I have worked with where the child knew before the betrayed knew, that's tough because you are asking your child to hold on to a secret. That goes against all parenting. Parents have to encourage their children not to keep secrets because secrets can be very destructive. But then they turn around and like, "Ooh, don't tell mommy that you saw me with someone else." And now the child has to hold on to a secret knowing that they are going to hurt the parent, especially when the parent finds out.
And then that child now has to be faced with a situation where they now have to make an adult decision when they're not capable, when they shouldn't have to, when all they should focus on is being a child.
Correct.
A lot of times, for couples to take the focus off of themselves, they'll either focus on the child or they'll engage in triangulation with the child being that third person. And how do you address that? Is your approach different if the child knows about the betrayal? Is that different? Do you take a different approach with your betrayal recovery piece? Does it become more multi-tiered or faceted or complicated?
It's an interesting dynamic that happens. It really depends on the age of the child. I very much encourage my couples to make sure that their child has support, that the school is aware that there are problems in the family and that they're being worked on.
Yep.
And it's really important to remind our children because they hear all kinds of things, especially depending on their age. Oh, your parents are going to get divorced. You're going to have two houses. You're going to, and sometimes it can be a teasing situation for a child who doesn't quite understand. And children take on the shame and guilt of both parents and feel that it's their fault, that if they were a better child, their parents wouldn't be arguing. They might not know the context by which the argument is. Again, it depends on their age, but age appropriate conversations with your children to let them know what's happening because children are sponges and they soak up everything, and you do not want to oversaturate your child. You don't, because if you feel that you really have no one to talk to, and usually when betrayal and infidelity is discovered, you really feel like you have no one to talk to. You do want to shout it from the mountaintops. You do want to take a Louisville slugger to both headlights. You absolutely want to key the car. There's so much destruction you want to do because you feel so out of control and you want to control something. One particular case that really pops out for me is one couple that was going through a infidelity, and the son, the only child, knew about it. He knew about it years beforehand. He had seen his father interacting with another woman, and his father threatened him and told him not to tell his mother. Well, at 7 years old, he suddenly became a bedwetter again. And he was a bedwetter for 3 years. His poor mother took him to all kinds of specialists to figure out why he became a bedwetter when he had been trained. He wasn't a bedwetter when he was 4 years old, 5 years old, 6 years old. Suddenly at 7 years old, he was a bedwetter again. The destruction that we do to our children is completely unnecessary.
From a developmental perspective, as they advance through their developmental stages, as their thinking becomes more abstract, they can re-experience the effects of betrayal at another age. It's going to recapitulate itself through the adolescent cycle of that child, much like grief. Much like if they lose the death of a parent, let's say it's at 5 years old, at 8 years old, they're going to re-experience their grief and loss differently because they've grown developmentally, and their cognitive abilities are now becoming more intact, and they're leaning towards more abstract thinking. So they're going to rethink that, re-experience it. And the other thing you mentioned that struck me is magical thinking. That depending on the age, children think that, well, because, dad is with another woman, it's because I wasn't a good enough child. I caused them too much stress. And the biggest thing is somehow in an age appropriate manner to normalize that and say, no, it wasn't your fault. It was not, it was your father, your mother made that decision that they made apart from you. And maybe it's not because they loved you any less. It's just it was things that were going on between them that caused that.
And those are conversations that are so important. And we lose sight of that when we're hurting. Because with betrayal comes a overwhelming sense of hurt. Because your person, one that you trusted with your life, has now ripped your heart out of your chest and is holding it beating. Now, what they do with it from that point on, that's the key to recovery. It's not necessarily the betrayal that hurts the most. It's the lying and the continuous lying and the trickle truth that comes out, and comes out in these little itty bitty pieces. And it's very frustrating for those that have been betrayed to experience that. Just tell me the whole truth. Just get it all out. And we so desperately want that, but I'll go against the grain a little bit on that. It's actually better to have it come out in bite-sized pieces.
Yes.
Because if it comes all at once, your entire nervous system is completely destroyed. It's too much too fast. So I like to slow everything down. We slow it all down. We see where we're at. And when there are questions, because there's always lots of questions, when there are questions, we decide which of all the questions that are circling in your mind at this moment in time, give me two that are the most important. We're going to put the others aside. They're going to be answered at some point, but they're not going to be answered now. I want to know the two questions that are most important for right now. And it helps to slow it all down. Slow it all down so that there might be a moment where the answer helps to settle everything down. Because if we give an opportunity for that, we actually might hear something that soothes us in a way. Because when we have holes in the story, oh, we add to them. We fill in all those holes. And usually we fill them in, not with very good things. Absolutely not. And in my particular case, and how I share my story is, yes, my husband said, I've met someone, and my whole world completely shattered. And it wasn't until a very wise coach months and months later, asked my husband, you said those three words to your wife. Was there anything else you wanted to say at that moment? And my husband said, yes, there actually was. And my ears perked up. I was like, what? Like, what did you want to say? And he said, I wanted to say to my wife, I've met someone. And I love how that makes me feel, but I don't want that with her. I want that with you. That's very different. That's very, very different. Like, oh, okay, maybe you should have led with that. Like, I like how this feels. I don't want that with her. I want that with you. So I've met someone, kind of thing. Like, reverse the order of it so that I wouldn't get the first three words and have the immediate reaction that I did. Because the reason that I had that reaction was that it opened Pandora's box of every single insecurity I have ever had, from when the first memory that I have to right before he said those three words. Every single insecurity that I bottled up, every single micro-betrayal that I had throughout my life, where somebody wronged me and I never processed it, I buried it. Those came out full force. It was just everything all at once. For me, that was my reaction to it. And as we went through the process of the infidelity, there were lots of other components that started to come out. Trickle truth. Had I gotten all that information all at once, all that horrific information, I don't think we would be where we are today. I do believe we would have divorced because I would not have been able, as strong as I am, I would not have been able to systematically go through things piece by piece. I needed the piece by piece. It was like a big jigsaw puzzle. I needed to do the edging first. I needed to see the framing of it all. And then I needed to put the pieces in. Some days, lots of pieces went in. I was like, I understand this, I understand that. Other times, I'd be holding a piece for hours and not knowing where it goes and just giving up for the day. And then the next day, a couple more pieces and whatnot. But yeah, it's definitely challenging because, again, it's a different type of trauma because you still have the person
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And if the person, and again, in my particular case, we both were committed to rebuilding. Sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes, and this is a very destructive thing, and I do not encourage this. Sometimes the betrayal is a way of getting out of the relationship. One partner feels that they have tried and tried and tried to speak to their partner, to explain how they feel, what's going on for them, and the partner's just not getting it. And they feel at a loss. They're at their ropes and they don't know how to end this relationship in a civil way, in a compassionate way, because they've tried several different ways and it's just not working. And they figure, you know what? I'm going to do the worst thing ever so that the partner will leave. And they will betray their partner in hopes that the partner will leave because the partner does not want to be in that relationship anymore. And that's destructive as well, because not only are you breaking apart the relationship, you're breaking the person. And
The thing that struck me is that that type of action is intentional.
yes,
And that isn't really self-sabotage. I mean, self-sabotage, sometimes people will do things because that's all they know. That's what they've grown up with, and through repetitive reinforcement, maybe for the wrong reasons, those types of patterns have been reinforced, and they do what they do. But this is more intentional. That it's like I couldn't get his attention any other way, so maybe this will do it. Or I couldn't get her attention any other way, so maybe this will do it. And that is, yeah, that's got to be, again, a very challenging situation to work with.
correct. And that's, again, one of the reasons I like to capture clients before the betrayal happens, kind of a precursor to it, and say, okay, we have a situation. We really need to work on it. We need to get it cleaned up where both parties feel seen, heard, validated, appreciated. Each one is caretaking each other's confidence, because confidence is a really big thing in a relationship. Absolutely, as it should be. Integrity, just a compassion, because there are two words missing from relationships, long-term relationships that are struggling. And those two words are please and thank you. For some reason, those two words, the two phrases, just start to disappear. My husband, 35 years we've been married. When he gets up from the couch to go to the kitchen to get himself something to drink, he will bring me back a glass of ice water. Even if I have a glass of ice water, he still brings me a fresh one. And I find it so sweet that he is thinking of me. And that's something that we want from our partner. We want to be thought of. That's why the random text message in the middle of the day, just thinking of you. I'm at the store. Is there anything you need? Just to be thought of sometimes is enough. And it's those little things that start to stack. And when we can focus on those little things, because what we focus on expands. So if we can focus on all those little nuances, those little good things, that becomes the foundation of that relationship.
And it's the little things that lead to the big things. It's just showing gratitude for your partner. It's showing that they are the center of your universe just by doing those little things and that's another way that we can make each other feel real good about being in the relationship by just simply being thought of, by being thought that we are worthy of just randomly having things done for us, that we do matter. And sometimes I think that gets taken for granted, particularly as I think couples become comfortable with each other, they tend to lose that. And it's always good to rekindle that. It's always good to put that in your mind, is just to show some appreciation for your partner any way you can every day. So
One of the things that I do with brand new couples that I start working with, and again, they walk into my office and usually one is dragging the other one because unfortunately, marriage therapy, counseling, anything related to mental health still has a stigma to it. It
yep.
just does and whatnot. That's why I'm an alternative. And I really encourage that terminology related to me, especially coaching, so that both people of the couple can walk in knowing this is going to be a little different. And I know from the feedback that I get usually after my very first session, because my sessions are 90 minutes. They're not 50 minutes, they're 90 minutes. Because I found that when we were in our situation, that 50 minutes wasn't enough time. It absolutely wasn't enough time. And I built in my sessions an hour buffer between my clients so that if we go over time, we go over time because something's moving, something's happening, we're getting there. And a lot of times after the first session, usually the men will comment, wow, had I known that marriage counseling was going to be like this, we would have done this much sooner. And it's a good thing to hear until I need to correct them because I want to make sure that everybody knows I'm not a therapist. I stay in my lane. I am a coach. It is very different. And that's why I'm the alternative to it. So with that being said, how I start with new clients is they sit down. Usually one partner is the body language. Their arms are crossed. They're sitting at the very edge of my love seat. I do not have a couch in my office purposely. There is a love seat, so you do need to sit rather close to each other. And one is very defensive. I haven't even said anything yet, and they're very defensive. The first question that I ask before we get started, just so I have a sense of how things are, I'd like you to tell me 2 things about your partner that you absolutely love and adore, and 1 thing about yourself that you're hoping that we can work on in our time together. And this usually generates tears from the partner because the partner that has been asked this question will say things that the other partner has not heard in such a long time that it invokes this visceral response of tears. And usually the partner will look at the other one that's in tears and say, why are you crying? And they will say, I haven't heard you say that. Well, you know that. No, just because I quote know it doesn't mean that I don't like hearing it. And the other exercise that I do as we move into recovery process is that for those couples that are social, one evening that they have a social event, they are not allowed to talk about themselves. They can only talk about their partner. And this one's a little hard. They struggle with this, but they understand when they come back and report back that this has actually happened, you can see the difference that the relationship has because they got to hear their spouse talk about them in such a manner that they have not heard that in quite a while. And it's these techniques that I use with clients that are easy enough to incorporate, really get them thinking and understanding that, again, it's the little things. They become the foundation for this new relationship. And anytime a stressor can come into the situation, because it will, you have a new relationship, there will be stressors, but you have enough of a foundation to be able to work on and go, okay, I recognize that that's a stressor. I'm not going to let it shake the foundation. We are going to talk about this. We are going to have clarity about this thing and learn the techniques to allow us to move through it.
I mean, I like the one technique where you ask and direct the partner to talk about not themselves but the other partner. I think it's brilliant in its simplicity, and it's also a great way to rekindle empathy for each other again. And I think if we can rekindle empathy, we can put ourselves in the other partner's shoes and see how they feel. I think it changes the dynamic of the relationship after betrayal.
Absolutely. There's one more technique. I'm giving everything away. Is that okay?
This is your platform tonight, Vanessa, so you can give as much away as you want.
One of the other things that I love to do with couples is to give them enough runway to be able to talk, to be able to share. And I will allow them to be on the hot seat. I'll ask them a very pointed question, and I will give them all the time that they need. And sometimes the silence can be, for the other partner, excruciating. There's like, please just answer the question. Whereas the partner that it's been directed at will have time to think about it, to really digest it and really formulate their answer that allows for that critical thinking. Because sometimes we're so reactive to things, and the reaction is what causes the pain, the hurt, and the negative emotions associated with it. Whereas if we're given an opportunity to marinate in it for a while and respond to it, the response is usually very well crafted and very genuine because it's directly from the heart. So I like to give a lot of runway, hence the reason why my sessions are 90 minutes and not 50 minutes, because a lot of times with 50 minutes, you feel rushed. I can see it when my clients come in and they sit down and they just can't wait to like it all out because they feel rushed. They feel as if they have to do that. No, you don't. If you can slow things down. It's cliche, but it's true. Slow down and smell the roses. Slow down and actually see your relationship for what it is, not what you want it to be, but this ideal, this unfortunately Disney perspective of it. I mean, I say a lot of times that Disney has done us very dirty because there's an expectation that is not realistic. It's not. It's fantasy. And fantasy can get us in trouble. It absolutely can. So it's good to have dreams. It's great to have goals. But I don't think anybody goes into a marriage with the goal of destroying their partner. Not at all. Absolutely not. Goals and dreams. And that's another technique that I use with my clients when they're ready, when they have some stability, is let's talk about the next 6 weeks. What would you like to see happen in the next 6 weeks? Because we can make some significant change in 6 weeks, not 6 days, but 6 weeks. What's the goal? What are we looking forward to? And let's not move the goalpost. Let's have a definitive decision as to what we are doing. And because I am unique in the fact that even after betrayal, I am still married. That's very unusual. To be in that position vocally. Because there are couples that do stay together. They do. They're just not as vocal as I am about it because I want to give other couples that just found out about betrayal hope.
Yep.
To know that there is hope. And for me, hope is hold on, pain ends. We don't have a timeline. There is no timeline. Grief and shame is not structured that way. It is not a clean ladder where all of the rungs are exactly 8 inches from each other or 12 inches from each other. Some are really tight. They're 4 inches. Others are 14. Some are 40 inches where you really have to climb up to it. You have to use your arms to get up to the next rung. It is very different for each person. And that's okay. I refer to it as a game of chutes and ladders because you have good days and you go up the ladder, and you have not so good days and you go down the chute. The goal is to get as far as you can in your own time frame.
Progress, certainly, in any life-altering circumstance is not linear. If you take 2 steps forward and 1 step backwards, you still made progress because you're 1 step ahead. The process of replanting after a betrayal is going to take as long as it's going to take. You take your time and you go with what the client gives you and you work at their pace. And that's part of the safety that you instill. And we also talked in the last episode about safety and structure. And you do provide structure, but there's enough empowerment so that the client can say, I'd like to go here because this is what's been going on in my life lately. So let's redo the structure piece. Let's go here. That empowers them, and it also allows them to collaborate in true fashion in terms of how they're going to see themselves after they're replanted.
Exactly.
So, well, I can go on for about another hour with you.
Absolutely. Well, in a couple of months, we'll do part 3 based on your audience's feedback, what questions they have. Because as you mentioned, it's so nuanced. There is so many variables, and each couple is as unique as their fingerprint.
Yep.
So what works for one couple might not necessarily work for another couple. And that's why I work one-on-one. I get a lot of business gurus coming at me going, oh, we can package it. You can do a course. You can do, 14 weeks. And, this week will be this and this week will be that. And it'll be great. And I can't do it. I can't because I remember being so lost and so wanting to speak to somebody that would give me hope, to speak to somebody that actually made it through to the other side. Because that was the other problem that I discovered. And again, keeping in mind, this was almost a decade ago, where those that I found that could help me were divorced. I didn't want to be divorced. So I really struggled to take advice or guidance from somebody that didn't make it through. So the fact that I have made it through is something that I wear with great pride, but it is not about me. It is about you. It is about what you are experiencing and whether you decide to stay or go or not make a choice yet because you don't have the clarity to make that decision. That's absolutely fine. And that's one of the reasons why we work on self-trust first. If you do not trust yourself, doesn't matter who else you trust. You can't trust your partner first before you trust yourself. You have got to trust yourself, your instincts, your intuition, your gut. You are. Because betrayal will shatter you into a million pieces. And now you get to rebuild it any which way you'd like.
And that's the other reason I like that you build in room for silence, because we go within, the answers are usually within us. And it gives us an opportunity to develop some clarity based on, instinctively trusting our inner voice and saying, this is what I need at this moment. And we can't do it if we're constantly talking with each other or talking at each other. You gotta let that room for, you gotta let that room for silence take place. So I'm going to ask you another question, totally unrelated to what we've talked about in the podcast, but I've been asking this question to my guests recently. And this is inspired by Tuesdays with Maury and Maury Schwartz. And in one of the chapters, he alludes to this question. So I'm going to ask you, for you, what is your idea of the perfect day for you?
I love the question. I do, because each day is different. And what was great about yesterday and wanting to recapture that again robs us of the possibility of what this day could be like. And As we started this conversation, before we even hit the record button and you asked me how I was, what a good life. I'm living my best every single day. And each day I embrace it and hope, again, hold on, pain ends. I hope that the encounters that I have with others, and I love bumping into people. You will very rarely see me with my phone in my hand when I'm out in public, when I'm outside my office. Not that I have it when I'm in my office, but I want to engage with people. I am a very firm believer that you are one conversation away from your life changing in a profound way, because you never know who you're going to talk to. So my perfect day would be a day that is better than the previous day. And the previous day was great as it was. So onward and upward.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Beautiful question.
Thank you. Well, I got to thank Maurice Schwartz for the inspiration. And I've gotten some very unique answers from all of my guests. So thank you for adding to the repository of answers I've already gotten. So my last question, tell our audience how individuals can get in touch with you, contract for your services. What's the best way for them to do that, Vanessa?
Oh, the best way is my URL. My website is understandingear.com. Lots of resources there. You can find everything related to relationship reset, as well as betrayal recovery. Lots of blogs, lots of podcast experiences that I've had. So Dave, thank you so much. This will be prominently displayed on my website as well. And you can find me on all of the socials. I do have a very large digital footprint, and I'm sure that Dave will include that in the footnotes as well, so that you have those. And just reach out, even if it's just to say, there was one takeaway from our conversation that really just tapped your heart, and you were like, yeah, I needed to hear that today. That made a lot of sense. We go from there.
Yes, and I'll make sure all of your information gets in the episode notes before we go live. Vanessa, thanks so much again for just another wonderful conversation. I sense there's going to be a part 3 in our future.
Likewise.
And
Thank you, Dave.
my pleasure, Vanessa. And with that, that's a wrap on another episode of the Teaching Journeys podcast. I'm your host, Dave Roberts, wishing you peace.